All right. So before we get started, I really want to acknowledge the uniqueness of this conversation today, because instead of being together somewhere fabulous like Miami, we're chatting from our homes because of the growing concerns with the coronavirus. It's a rainy Sunday here in San Francisco, so you're likely to hear some raindrops hitting the windows periodically. But what's it like where you guys are in Florida today?
Well, it's beautiful. I'm sorry. I always feel guilty saying it's beautiful outside. We're here. We're kind of self-quarantined with our children and our dogs, and we're just doing what we can. We can kind of show up for each other right now by not showing up, right? So we're creatively figuring out how to keep doing the next right thing.
And just a disclaimer, if there are children or dogs that bark, we are also home with those things happening behind the store, and you just never know. So we're just going to roll with it.
That's exactly it. I have a husband and dogs sequestered in the other room. And so, yes, if you hear dogs barking, it's just because they're happy and they want to be included.
It's life. It's life. Yeah.
So speaking of life, let's talk a little about life before Abby and Glennon together. Abby, you're a true soccer icon, and in many ways, you're very synonymous with the game itself. What did soccer actually mean to you while you were playing?
It's funny because I played soccer for 30 years, and from the beginning, it was something that I was always really obnoxiously, I think, for some other people, good at. My first 3 soccer games, I scored 27 goals. I grew up in a big family of athletes. My eldest sisters, they both played sports in college. And because of that, it was just kind of ingrained in me. Like, that's what we did as a family. We did sports. And luckily for me, I was able to succeed and get a college scholarship, and then be able to make it into the professional world, which kind of catapulted me into the national team scene. And I spent the rest of my career there. I feel like soccer taught me how to grow up, right? In many ways. There's another side of that story that I've kind of learned over the last 4 years since retiring, is that it stunted my growth in many other ways that I'm learning to process through now. Soccer was my everything. It was like the North Star for me. Everything that I did for the whole of my adult life was in and wrapped around this game. And because of that, it gave me this true sense of purpose, which is one of the things I talk a lot about to people around me. Even now, trying to understand what my true purpose is, having that North Star is everything. And if people can find out what their purpose is and what their passions are, I think they're going to live a much better life for sure.
So then how did it feel like when you decided to retire? Did you lose that North Star and that purpose?
Yes. It was terrifying. It was hard. It was scary. For a lot of reasons, I was going through such a really weird transitional period of my life, not just retiring from playing, but, my first marriage was on the rocks, and I was struggling to understand what all of that meant. The biggest thing for me, because I wrapped so much of my identity around this soccer player, just being this soccer player, it made me really insecure about what I would do for the rest of my life. When you have that passion, you have inset inside of what you do, this idea of doing something bigger than yourself. When you have that, and then you step outside of it and you feel like you no longer have that, it's really it's untethering. It creates a little bit of honestly a panic. And luckily I met Glennon literally a few months after I retired, which truly I think saved my life in many ways. But not enough people talk about those transitions in life and how difficult they are. And early on in my retirement, somebody told me this really great quote about a trapeze artist. So often in life, we've got our hands on this one rung, and we're swinging and we're swinging. And in order to get to that next rung, what needs to happen, most times you have to actually let go. And the magic happens somewhere in the middle. And so it took me a long time to embrace that truthfully, but finally I think I did. Meeting Glennon, it really helped me shape a little bit more of like what the purpose of my life would be. So yeah, long-winded answer.
No, it's a great answer. And it's something I think so many of us, particularly women, go through as we're looking to make those big pivot moments in our lives, whether it's, before you have children, after you have children, when you find that one big career and then decide that that's not the career that you're meant to do for the rest of your life. So many of us have gone through those big transition moments that are, to your word, terrifying, but end up being, without question, the right decision for us. Glennon, you wrote about meeting Abby in your book, Untamed, which I just finished this weekend. I'm sorry I didn't get that copy in person, but thankfully Kindle dropped that off for me very quickly last week. But as I was reading it, I just couldn't help but be just awestruck by the connection that the two of you had so quickly and so organically. Talk to me a little bit about, what that moment was like.
I was also awestruck by that moment. It's funny because it feels even more wild to me because I was a person who never really believed in romantic love at all. It was a joke in my family. I would say, love, some people use love like a laser, but I use it like a floodlight. I just love everybody a little, but nobody a ton, right? Which is hard to think about now. But when I first saw Abby walk into a room, I just remember feeling 3 words rise up in me, and those words were, "There she is." And for a long time, I thought those words came to me from on high, like I was a part of some kind of Disney moment. But now I know that those words came from within, that I was actually finally allowing myself to hear the voice of the girl I was before the world told me who to be. And so the next part of my life, I did choose to follow my love for Abby, and it was the turning point of my life. But not because I chose Abby. It was because I finally decided to become a woman who honors herself, right? Who would prefer to abandon everyone else's expectations of her instead of abandoning herself. And that's kind of the message of this new book, and also how I want to live the rest of my life.
Well, in Untamed, you talk about, a lot of your own career and how it started. And your meeting was actually pretty pinnacle for the two of you, but also as individuals, because you were at this event to talk about your new books that were coming out. Mm-hmm. So your career obviously started very, very differently than Abby's. You were not a soccer star.
Not yet.
You play soccer now?
There's still time, sister.
Oh, that could be the next chapter of this book, right?
No, never gonna happen.
Never going to happen. Well, that's fair. We can't all be world famous 2-time Olympic, soccer stars. So, as a writer, did your writing prepare you to be this incredibly open, transparent, tell it like it is person that you are now? Was that something you always were, or did it come through with your writing?
No, I think I was the opposite of that, because I always had this big fiery self inside, right? I actually have come to believe we all do, every single last one of us. But I was just understood really early that I was too much, that my big feelings and big ideas and big fear and big all of it was too much. And so I actually silenced myself for 25 years with addiction, right? So I became bulimic when I was 10, and then that morphed into all other addictions, and I didn't get sober till I was 25. So I really think that in a lot of ways was numbing and hiding that big, fiery, wild self. And then I got into recovery. And my first recovery meetings, I just sat in a circle and thought, oh my God, these are the first honest people I have ever met in my life, right? So there's a voice that you're allowed to use in recovery meetings that is our real voice, right? It's like we have the untamed voice inside, and then we have the representative tamed voice that we use with the outside world, right? The one that's saying all of the socially appropriate things when we're thinking other things, right? So I learned to let that voice, to unleash that voice in those dark basement meetings. And then I had 3 children, and I was so stressed out, and I was just dripping with babies, and I couldn't get to meetings anymore. And so I decided to try to use that voice on the blank page, right? And so I just started writing using the same voice that I used in those meetings. And I got to see my real self on a blank page, and it was a miracle, you know? And as an artist, that's the only thing worth doing. Like if you're not an artist if you're using that representative voice, right? Like we all need artists to actually use their truest voice. And I think the cool thing about the world right now in corporate America everywhere is that we are offering people the freedom to bring their whole entire selves to the family, to the dinner table, to the meeting, to church. And that's what's going to transform groups of people into becoming the next right thing, right? When we create spaces for people to be, to really use that inner voice on the outside.
Too much. You mentioned being too much. I think for a lot of people, they hear that at least somewhere and sometime in their life. You know, how are you teaching your children that too much is okay? And in fact, too much is a brilliant, beautiful thing to be.
Well, we may have overcorrected. When the other morning we were trying to get ready for school, and our daughter was in her, 13th paragraph about her feelings, and I just felt like maybe I should have talked about the value of suffering silently more.
A little bit.
So I think we all, as parents, do that, right? We just pendulum to the other side.
Absolutely.
We pendulum parenting, right? I mean, I don't know. What we do know is that each of us are born with a particular constitution, a particular emotionality, a particular imagination, and that none of us fulfill or get done the work we're supposed to get done on this world, on this earth, unless we unleash it fully. Mm-hmm. And we have one kid who's too much, right? We have one who's sort of private, and so I think the beauty is letting them each just be who they are. And with our too much one of the things we always do is when she brings her muchness to us, we've learned to say, "Are you ready for the solution yet?"
Oh.
And usually she'll say, "No." Because we just want to share, right? Like
that's right.
Because isn't it so annoying when you start sharing yourself and somebody jumps in to offer you a solution? It makes you feel stupid because you know there's a solution. You just want to have feelings for a little while, right? So that's one thing that helps her just have a safe place to share her feelings, and then maybe later we get to problem solving.
I think there's going to be a lot of people who listen to that who are going to use that advice, not just for their children, but also at work. Mm-hmm. And with every individual that they encounter, because we go through that all the time, right? It's like you get this deluge sometimes of feelings and conversations, and our immediate instinct is always to jump in. But the good advice is to take that pause and also then, give that advice of, are you ready for the solution? And if the answer is no, it's like, all right, I know to just back up for a little while. And when you're ready, I'm here to answer some questions and give you my advice. I like that. There's so much uncertainty right now, probably more so than ever. You talked about being semi-sequestered at home. My stepson's prom was just canceled. My nieces and nephews are now out of school. Their parents are trying to figure out what to do with them all full time. And all of us at Zendesk and many other companies are now working from home and under these pretty significant travel restrictions, that we as a country and as a world aren't accustomed to having. Abby, you talked very passionately in Wolfpack about being charged with that unification and care while being co-captain. How do we now move others to feel that way today about the unification and care when they perhaps aren't able to be, face to face or, with people in that team camaraderie like we're so accustomed to being?
This is a beautiful question. And I think that the early adapters who can figure this out are going to do really well during this period of time, because we don't know how long this is going to last.
Right.
Something that's really important for our family is we are solutions oriented, and it can get really exhausting turning on your television and only seeing the problems, only seeing the scare and the fear. Not that it's not warranted and not that it's not true. It's just, you have to manage how much you're going to give of yourself and what you're going to do about it. So as the leaders of our family, we are trying to instill a schedule with our children. We're trying to instill doing something physically active every day. They're going to be reading. They're making a book list right now of books that we can get them ordered and sent to our house. It's my firm belief that even though we might be in different locations, there are ways that we can connect. And I think that the single most important thing that we can do right now is to reach out in any way, right? Say you might be lonely, or you might be alone in your house for 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. There has to be some sort of communication or connection. And the way that I would explain this is that the time that I spent playing on the national team, it was so valuable. And everybody always asks me, do you miss playing soccer? And the truth is, no, I did that for a long time. And what is done there. What I miss most is the people. I miss the people that I was able to share my life with. Now, because we're not going to be in actual proximity of each other, doesn't mean that I can't stay invested in their lives. This is where technology, I think, can really, truly help us.
Thank God.
And allow us not to get so crazy bored, or allow us to, we have to be creative. That is the most important thing right now. Leadership is calling for people to be creative, creative with what you do with your time, how to connect, how to reconnect, create games, do anything. We're going to keep them on a schedule though for our kids.
And I think all creativity is exactly right, and also prioritizing. I mean, I spent a year. My team spent a year preparing the book tour for Untamed,
which was just canceled.
We canceled the entire thing. We were on the road, did one day, we canceled the whole thing, and it was heartbreaking. But just like you all have made this decision with this, I was laying in my bed the night before canceling the decision to cancel the whole thing, and I thought, God, of course this is happening. The book that I created that is the most beautiful creation I've ever made, and I'm going to freaking cancel. And then I thought, no, Untamed is not the most beautiful thing I've created in my work. The community of people that are coming to my events that trust me as an artist and a leader, that is the most beautiful creation I've created. So this time in leadership is calling us to choose our people and our community above our product, right? And that is a beautiful thing that happens in crisis times, right?
You're absolutely right. And hopefully this is going to be a bit of a transition for us of thinking of technology as one of those things that's stopping us from having those very human connections, and looking at it more of, this is the time for Zoom interviews. This is the time for FaceTime, with your parents. This is the opportunity for us to really be embracing technology and making the conscious decision, to your point, of reaching out to each other. And it's not through just text message anymore. It's we need to be having these face-to-face interactions with one another. And, and almost, embracing this as an opportunity for reconnection.
And that's a mindset, right? It's a mindset that you have to choose to look at it from an optimistic point of view and an opportunity point of view rather than what you are now missing or what is now happening. It's happening to everyone. And if it hasn't happened to you, just wait. It's about to happen to you, you know? So I think that managing this is so much about your mind. So being present and being able to maybe meditate or get your family together and do breathing exercises or go and get active, you know, do push-ups, sit-ups, yoga, whatever it is. Like, there are methods that you can impart and instill in your daily life right now that will make you to come out of this situation better than when you started. Like, that's what we truly believe as a family.
Well, one of us believes we should do push-ups. There will be
as long as one of you is doing the push-ups and the other is cheering the other on, right?
I'll take the breathing.
And it's also, I think we also have to acknowledge that there's a greater need for sensitivity right now, because not everyone, while everyone is going through this experience, not everyone is at the same pace with the experience. You know, we're going through it at different levels. And Glennon, there's a passage in Untamed that is about your daughter and about that conversation you were internally having about the opposite of sensitive not being brave. Yeah. And that so struck me when I was reading that. You know, when you said the opposite of sensitive is insensitive. Would you just share that story? Because I think it's so appropriate right now.
Yeah, I mean, raising my middle daughter, Tish, has really helped me change the view I had of myself as a child, because I was a super sensitive child and I thought that I was broken, right? That's why I went into addiction. But Tish is super sensitive. The story in the book is one day her teacher told her kindergarten class that the polar bears were losing their homes because of the icebergs. And the rest of the children were sad, but able to soldier on to recess, right? But Tish was just stunned by this news, as she often is. And our family spent the next weeks just incessantly talking about polar bears. We talked about polar bears so much that I just began to hate polar bears with every fiber of my being, okay? Just to let you know, I, at one point in a low moment of my parenting, asked my friend to send me an email pretending to be the president of Antarctica, just announcing that the polar bears were now A-okay. Okay,
kudos to creativity, by the
way. Right, thank you. I am creative. I'm using technology and creativity. It didn't work. So one night, she was going to bed and she just said, "Mommy, it's the polar bears." And I said, "Oh no." And she said, "It's just that it's the polar bears now, but nobody cares. So soon it will be us." Mm. And I thought, oh my God, the polar bear. Like, I thought, oh, she's not crazy to be heartbroken about the polar bears. The rest of us are crazy not to be, right? Which made me realize, oh, she's not broken. She's a prophet. Like, these are the highly sensitive people in most cultures are respected, pulled apart. These are the Shah men and women, the medicine men and women, the clergy, the poets. They're people who are able to see things that others can't see, hear things that others can't hear, and are willing to feel things that others can't feel, right? And so highly sensitive people are crucial to our culture's survival, right? These are the people who are standing on the bow of the Titanic yelling, "Iceberg, iceberg," while everyone else is like, "We just want to keep dancing." Right? So
I'm sorry, I'm having a coughing break.
Okay. So, I feel like in every group of people we have, in every corporation, in every family, we are sometimes so hell-bent on speed and efficiency and progress that the sensitive people slow us down a little bit, right? And so it is easy to dismiss them and call them broken, but instead of actually being wise enough to consider that they are responding appropriately to broken systems and broken worlds, and are often the canaries in the coal mines, right? So, what we've learned with our daughter and what I've learned about sensitive people is that you, at your own peril, you ignore them, right? At your own culture's peril. Like, they might be annoying and weird, and that is what I am. Annoying and weird.
You're not annoying and weird.
Thanks. I'm annoying and weird, but prophetic. as well. So, I just always encourage people to, the word sensitive, it means able to sense.
Well,
Right?
and we definitely need that now, right? We need the speed and the efficiency in order to move forward, but we also need to have that extra compassion and that sensitivity for people who are not accustomed to working from home full time, for people who maybe don't have a family structure with them right now while they are sequestered in their homes, for people who are missing that opportunity to be, in the office and surrounded by others. That sensitivity is going to be more important to us than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take a pause right here. And I just want to let everyone know that if you're interested in hearing the rest of this conversation, I'm going to tell you how to do that a little bit later in the program. All right, so you two are both let's switch gears a bit. You're both very public figures. You're both out there on your own together, writing these books, which are pretty transparent about your lives, your family, your everything. How do you determine what stays just between the two of you, or just within the familial structure, and what gets out into the world? Is there a conversation you guys have before something gets into a book or into a presentation, or how do you make that happen?
Always. If you're going to always be a public person and you're discussing, I'm a memoirist, so it's my job to dig deep and into my own life, right? So, it's not just with Abby, it's with everybody. I gave an early copy of Untamed to Craig, my ex-husband, and just said, read every word, tell me what you think. Like, everything is an ongoing, valuing everyone's feelings above the final product, right? So there are some writers who think differently. I love Anne Lamott, and she says, well, if they wanted you to write differently, they should have behaved better. I love that. It's not my philosophy, right? I care deeply that each person is represented in every book, in every Instagram post, in everything, how they see themselves. Because I just think it's just I can tell my own story, but it's like a Venn diagram, right? I can tell my own story. I cannot tell anyone else's story. And in the parts where the Venn diagram overlaps, I always ask first.
That's good. I think one of the things that Glennon and I learned from our first marriages is this idea of communication and really what it is. And for us, truly, I think communication is one of the most foundational elements to the way that we function as a family, as a couple, and even as individuals. I think because of that, because of our ability to truly communicate with each other and to listen to each other and to have hard conversations, especially when that Venn diagram overlaps with our work and our business world and sometimes our income.
Yes.
Those conversations are even more important to be had on the front end, and to get mined for the gold, so that whenever the final product comes out, we are honest and it is truthful, and it represents all the parts of who we are. One of the things that we've always talked about is whenever we have something to discuss and we talk about it between the two of us, before it goes out into the world, we need to make sure that whatever it is, whatever open wound it was, has scarred over. Nadia, she is a friend of ours.
Nadia
Boltzweber. She talked about, not telling you. You're actually better at saying this part.
Well, she just always reminds me, like, we write from our scars, not our open wounds, right? And yeah, that's just super. I remember that all the time, because I feel like a lot of people are like, I have a story, I'm going to write it, da, da, da. And it's when they're in the midst of the pain, and that's when it's not necessary. It feels more like a cry for help, and makes people feel uncomfortable, instead of being an act of service that makes people feel comforted and healed. And I think the difference is often how long you wait to tell a story, or to whom you tell it. When things are fresh and the pain is new. I have a very small circle of people that I have earned the right to hear my messy, gaping, open wounds. And that is my family and my therapist and my, and then what happens with pain over time, almost always, if you're sitting with it, is that there's wisdom in it. Pain feels so personal at first. And then after a while, you always learn it's not personal. It's universal. Like there's always a universal lesson in it. But nobody's thinking that in the beginning, right? Nobody's in the midst of their pain, in the midst of their divorce, in the midst of their loss going, oh, this is universal. Wisdom here, right? No, it takes a while. And that's the difference between a diary and a memoir.
Right. And that's great advice for anyone who's out on Instagram.
Yes.
Wait till the scars have formed before you let the gaping wound just leave it be for a bit.
It should not be a diary. No.
Well, it sounds like communication is, a major foundation of the success between the two of you. I was, reading the interview that you both did in Glamour, and one of the things that hit me was the story around gender norms and the communication that you had to have pretty early on in the relationship, and I don't remember which one of you said it, but it was, even when you thought you were a progressive person, you still have to undo all of the gender expectations that you grew up with. And I think it's, it's not just gender expectations. We grow up with all this baggage, that gets pushed down upon us. But how did you figure this out? Who did ultimately become the person who kills the bugs in the family?
That was early on. I was like, I'm so cool, but with all of this, same gender stuff, but I'm relatively new to gay culture, so I need to know which one of us gets the bugs. That was the only deal breaker I had. And at the time, Abby was like, oh, I've got it. I got the bugs, babe. She's so scared. She's so scared of the bugs. But she does.
Who likes bugs? I don't know.
And you live in Florida where the bugs are, they're not exactly the normal bugs.
They're big.
But it is so interesting. It's such a study. It's a beautiful study on gender roles and expectations when you're in a same-sex marriage, because when it's a mixed gender marriage, things just are invisible. Like you just, and I've been in both. So I know who does what is a little bit invisible. It's like you settle into things, but with two girls, it's like, oh, it's not going to assume that you're taking the trash out. It's not assumed that like I remember Abby, early on saying to me, I don't want you to just let me handle the finances. And as a feminist woman, I was so embarrassed that I was just allowing, just us to fall into that role. I don't know why, because she's taller. She says the finances, it doesn't make any sense anymore, right? It shows archaic thinking.
Absolutely.
Well, it also shows that in your past relationship, that was a social gender norm that you had adhered yourself to. So especially being an older, woman in her 40s, somebody who has made some money and has understanding of this dynamic, you had to unlearn what had been passed down to you,
Yeah. I don't know anything you just said because I'm still stuck on the older woman.
I caught that too, by the way.
We'll talk about that later.
Oh
okay?
my God.
I feel like that's going to be some communication that's going to happen offline. We're going to have this.
So women have to figure out their own finances separate.
That's right.
That's
right.
Absolutely.
And there's another thing. There's another thing that we figured out, which is, okay, so finances don't get to be for you. And then we had this thing with the children. And I've been talking about this to anyone who will listen, because all of my friends are like, yes, that. Okay. So there's this thing that happens in my family with my ex-husband. We co-parent like a brain, really. It's like the three of us. And with Abby, that Abby would come in the morning. We have 3 children. They're all over the place, and say, okay, tell me what to do. I'm ready. Tell me what to do. Okay. Which on the surface sounds sweet. Okay. But annoys me to no end, because what I figured out is that in every family, if let's just say there's 2 parents in the family, right? And the one person shows up and says, I'm here, I'm ready to do 50% of the work. What's the work?
Right.
Then it means that the other person is the list maker. Like the other person has a constant ticker on their head, creating the list of things that even need to be done, when all the other person has to do is show up and say, what do we do? Right? And so it's the invisible labor of being the one who has historically been the woman, who is constantly has the load of the tickering, what needs to be done, the doctor's appointments, the social stuff, the school stuff, all the things. Then she has to like make all the lists and distribute them.
Right.
But the invisible work is being the person who carries it all in their brain. Right. So what we figured out is I need everybody tickering. Yeah. I don't want to be the only tickerer. That's the invisible work, the historic invisible work of being a woman, is that I have less time in my day, in my brain, in my creative self to get my work done, because I'm carrying the mental load of the entire
family.
The opportunity cost.
The opportunity cost.
Right. And it can be a very difficult transition when you actually meet a partner who wants to come to the relationship in an even place like that. You know, I too was married before, and I was very much, in that role of this is my female role, and this is how I'm supposed to play it. Then I met, someone who really wanted to come, to the relationship as a true partner. And that was a big challenge for me. It was like, what do you mean you want a ticker right alongside me? That's my role. Like, you're now in my space, don't get in on this. But it turns out, our roles have, switched so often, even throughout the 10 years that we've been together. I'll acknowledge he's way better at doing laundry than I am. And I'm okay with it. It's one less thing that I have to do and stress about. And he enjoys it because he wants it done a certain way. And it's like, that's great. I don't have to do that any longer. And so we each take ownership of something that also brings us joy. And then we talk about the things that don't together. And it's like, all right, I don't enjoy this. You don't enjoy this. But one of us, maybe both of us, have to actually take ownership of this.
I love that.
I think one of the things that I've really learned, and that was beautiful, I think that that's so important, and that story needs to keep getting told. One of the things through this tickering exercise that was really important was the way Glennon was able to communicate this with me, because I think that that's where the initial breakdown happens, where she's so emotionally intelligent that she knew how best to actually describe what she was feeling, how best to illustrate what this is. She's like, on ESPN, that's what she said to me, Abby, on ESPN, and there's the ticker on the bottom, and it's always running with like the current events, like things that they're not necessarily playing. I'm like, yeah. She's like, that is what I have going in my brain all the time about our family, our kids, bills, what needs to get done, all of the things that are happening. And I didn't know that. I'm a present person. And so it actually has taken me a long time to learn what it's like. And what I have found, which is so freaking amazing, and I didn't understand how much less investment I was having in my family because I wasn't doing this. So when you walk into your home at the end of the day and you've gone out, you've worked or whatever, you lay yourself down in bed, you know deeply that you are a full contributing member to the family. Mm-hmm. Not that you're just the bread maker or the breadwinner, or you're the homemaker or the stay-at-home person, that you are a full parent. Mm-hmm. And what that has caused me is to get closer with our children. Mm-hmm. It has caused me to have better relationships with them because I know what's going on in their world. And it's not like I'm always playing catch up. It's not like what's going on in school. It's like, how was that project? Mm-hmm. And so there's so much more capacity for deeper, more enriched relationships because of it. And then of course, that opportunity cost that allows you to go do your thing, it also allows me to go do my thing, because we have these scheduled periods of time where then, okay, I'm going to go. Like sometimes now it's hilarious. I'll be in the living room. She'll be like, what are you doing? And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, tickering. I'm
like, yes, keep going. I won't interrupt her.
I'm tickering, just thinking about the day, thinking about, and so the responsibility and the ability for her to just like ground and be like, oh, I'm not doing this alone, allows us to actually be able to connect on a much deeper level too. So there's so much beauty, and this is like one of the most life-changing things that I've ever been able to be a part of. And I'm just grateful for your leadership and the illustration of ESPN, because that really worked for me.
Well, and I think tickering is now going to be, a word that gets utilized in homes all over the place, and probably in offices too, because this works for teams. It's not just one person's responsibility in a team or a department to have the tickering. It's every person's responsibility, so that load is dispersed across everyone, and you're all active participants in the success. So that's I'm excited to see how this starts trending, and I'd like this to be something that people start really talking about at home and at work. All right, we're coming to the end here. You've given a big chunk of your Sunday to us, and we're so appreciative. So I want to play just a quick lightning round. So this is fast and furious. What first comes into your head, and we'll see just how similar, how different things are. All right. So favorite decade?
80s.
Right now.
Oh, favorite band?
Bon Jovi.
Dave Matthews.
Indigo Girls.
How many do you have?
I'm sweating. This is like, okay, I'm going to calm it down.
All right. Favorite dating memory?
Meeting.
Yeah. Our first meeting.
The moment we met.
Favorite color?
Rainbow.
It's not a color, it's red.
Rainbow.
Most outrageous gift you've ever given each other?
Oh my God, now I'm sweating. Oh, I got a rainbow wedding ring. Look at my rainbow wedding ring.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Isn't it the most precious thing? Yeah.
I'm going to say the most outrageous gift that you ever gave me were the 3 kids.
Oh, that's a big gift.
I feel like she's winning this lightning round.
There's still time. Best relationship advice?
Listen, talk. Yep.
Talk and listen.
Favorite thing to do if you're under quarantine?
I should say read, but I'm going to say Netflix.
Love is Blind. We just got into Love is Blind yesterday.
Oh, don't admit that.
Yeah, we did.
I haven't watching highbrow documentaries.
No. This time calls for every and all things to occupy us in certain ways, both good and bad. Love is Blind is going to be on your list.
Love is Blind.
Do it.
I think that is a beautiful place for us to end.
Great. I hope they only remember that. That's
all
great.
right. So I'll give you one last question, just so we get we've balanced out the Love is Blind. What's the one lesson that you want to give people right now that you wish someone had given to you?
Well, a lot of pain in my life would have been made better if I had known that I was never too much, that I was born with the exact purpose, with the exact constitution, with the exact emotionality that I needed to get my work done on the earth. The sensitivity that led me to addiction is the same sensitivity that I use now to be a really good artist. And the kind of fire, I call it fire, my therapist calls it anxiety, that makes me fearful sometimes is also this exact same fire that I used to be a really good activist. So, what I think now more than ever, with the world changing as it should be, we just need people to bring their full selves, right? In meetings, in relationships, to say the true thing inside of them, and just let it be awkward, say the thing and allow it to change the world's on the outside. Bring your full self is what I'd say.
What I would say is one of the most important things about when I wrote the Wolfpack book is in the note to the reader. And in it, I invite men into the equation of learning about, from a perspective of a woman, what it feels like and what it looks like to lead. Leadership is universal. It is ungendered. But you can learn so much from reading works of art written by women. You can learn about the people you work with. You can learn about your spouses. You can learn about your parents. It is so important because women have been reading works by men, for men, since the beginning of time, and they've been trying to find themselves in that, right? And I don't think that we've offered an invitation to men to do the same. So this is not like a plug for my book, but it is a shameless plug for my wife's book. Her book just came out, and it is one of the most beautiful works of art about a woman trying to free herself from the cages that all women are put in. And I think that this book, it is not only important for women to read, but I think it's really important for men to read, just so that they understand what an experience is like and what life is like for women, because we need to, in order to get rid of all of the stuff that's going on, the misogyny, the sexism, we all have to find out and understand where we came from and how we've gotten here this day. So I don't know, for me, find works that are written by people that don't look like you, that don't talk like you, or maybe come from different places. That is the only real way that we are going to be able to come together and solve these big, big issues.
And so beautiful for introverts like me, because you can learn about people without people. You read a book, you can learn deep about people without having to drink coffee.
Well, perhaps you will share a reading list, like the top 5 books that you would both suggest that people during this time that they have maybe not, they other than watching Love is Blind, if you want the top 5 books that you would recommend people read. Right?
Yes, awesome. Yeah, this is good. I like it. I like a challenge.
You go first.
Well, not right now.
You don't have to do it right this moment.
Oh, no.
After. Give yourselves a little time to think that one out. With that, I want to thank you both so very much for spending time with Zendesk, with our audience, with us, and virtual hug from across the United States. And thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.